Art Swiden was the villain of the 1950s heavyweight division, ahead of his time as he taunted his opponents, and when they tried to retaliate, they found that the man they called the Pittsburgh Phantom was almost impossible to hit. But outside the ring, he was a man of the people, fighting his way out of poverty. A friend who was always there saying, "I'm not here to hurt you, I'm here to help you." Reporters called his style as cold as a penguin's toe and cooler than a cucumber in Alaska, a fighter they called Art Swiden didn't have a childhood. Tragically, he lost his mother when he was 5 and his father when he was 7. He was sent to live with his strict and religious grandparents, but the orphan grew restless and left home at the age of 12. He found work at an amusement park and often slept in a coal cellar. At the age of 14, he lied about his age and joined the Marine Corps, gaining entry because of his large build. He stayed in the service for over a year before the brass at Parris Island realized that Swiden had forged his grandmother's signature. Tossed out of the Marines, he traveled to St. Louis where he had a brother in the Army. "I lived in the YMCA there," Art said, "and one day I wandered into the gym where a few Golden Gloves fighters were training. I joined them, found out it was pretty fun, and before I knew it, I was in the tournament." Swiden won the Golden Gloves in the light heavyweight class and later the Missouri Championship tourney. He received a wallet as a prize, which the impoverished Swiden immediately traded in for a meal. Swiden then returned to his hometown of Pittsburgh before venturing out to California to visit a sister, but he was short on funds and only made it as far as Ohio. Necessity led him to find employment as a laborer in the bustling Columbus freight yards, but he soon found working for a living to be a fate worse than death. He found a boxing gym and began training alongside contenders like Tommy Yaros and Lee Sala. It wasn't long before Swiden became a teenage sensation, earning an exhibition bout with heavyweight champion Joe Louis. Before the show, Swiden was warned, quote, "Do your best, but remember, you're not going to make the champ look bad." Swiden turned professional in 1945, managed by Bunny Buntag and trained by Mike Bazzone. He had his sights set on heavyweight glory, but tragedy struck in his fourth pro fight when he hit Don George with 2 simultaneous blows in the 3rd round. The impact proved devastating as George crumbled to the canvas and later died. Swiden testified in front of a coroner's jury that the blows were intended to raise George's head in the air, not to kill him. The tragic incident made Swiden change his boxing style from a power hitter to a stylist who relied on defense and every dirty trick in the book. Swiden compiled a record of 16-3 by 1948, but his manager warned him that he needed more dedication as he accused Swiden of spending too much time with the ladies and smoking cigars. Coming off a decision win over the capable Vern Mitchell, Swiden faced his biggest test to date in contender Jackie Cranford, a fighter once described as the next Gene Tunney. Swiden was winning the bout easily, flooring Cranford twice but overdoing it with his dirty tricks. According to the Pittsburgh Sun-Times, Swiden, quote, repeatedly choked, heeled, and hit Cranford on the break, getting warned 4 times until being disqualified in the 8th round. His purse was withheld by the Athletic Commission, and after the bout, Cranford's legendary trainer Ray Arcel offered Swiden some advice. "You've got a lot of ability," Arcel said. "You can go a long way. But forget about fighting the way you did tonight. Don't pay attention to men who teach you those tricks. Don't listen to their sympathy when the tricks backfire. Fight clean, and you'll get somewhere. Otherwise, someone who knows more dirt than you will wreck your career." Arcel's words became prophetic as Swiden found himself unable to get any big fights. 2 months later, he suffered the only knockout loss in his career when he was caught by Bob Satterfield's right hook in the 1st round. "Only time I ever touched the canvas," Swiden said. "It was the best thing that ever happened to me. From that day on, I forgot about hitting like Dempsey. I concentrated on boxing like Tunney. I went another 14, 15 years, and no one was able to take advantage of me." Over the next 4 years, Swiden was inconsistent, alternating between winning and losing streaks. He dabbled in acting, appearing in the Pittsburgh Light Opera, before Rocky Marciano hired him as a sparring partner. After 2 days, Marciano told his handlers to, quote, "Get him out of here." Art wasn't afraid of anybody, fellow fighter Andy DePaul said. He boxed everybody. Nobody could hit him. Swiden took off 5 years from the sport, getting married for the first time to a wealthy older woman who didn't want him to fight. Swiden eventually divorced and returned to the ring in 1957. He won 3 straight fights, upsetting Texas state champion Buddy Turman, Bobby Spaeth, and turning in a career-best performance against the undefeated Wayman Thomas. Reporters described that Swiden made Thomas look like a man who had a truck full of produce and nowhere to deliver it. "Swiden's the best fighter I've ever seen in this town," promoter Joe Lassiter said. "He's an octopus, all arms, one of the best heavyweight counterpunchers and defensive artists you'll see anywhere." Both Swiden and manager Buntag cried robbery after a decision loss to Orville Pitts, a fighter that Buntag said ran away like a wild chicken. Swiden shut out the rugged Oscar Farrow in his next fight, and his opponent called him the cleverest boxer he'd ever been in the ring with. On May 19th, 1958, Swiden received his highest-profile fight to date as he took on top contender Zora Folley. The half-Hungarian, half-Syrian Swiden told referee Frank Cerna, "I'm Italian, like you." But the referee didn't afford him any special favors as he ruled a well-placed body punch that floored Folley as a low blow. Folley's manager Bill Swift rushed into the ring, followed by Swiden's team as a mini riot ensued. One of Swiden's cornermen attacked the timekeeper. Swiden himself tried to kick Folley's manager. Meanwhile, Folley writhed in pain on the canvas, clutching his abdomen for over 10 minutes. Eventually, order was restored and the fight resumed. However, the referee repeatedly warned Swiden to refrain from stepping on Folley's feet. Swiden responded by teasing Folley further. "Come on, you bum," Swiden said. "You're not going anywhere." Folley was given a unanimous decision, while Swiden and his manager protested that Folley should have been counted out earlier. 2 months later, Swiden was involved in another controversy, this time clearly outpointing the George Gainsford-managed Burt Whitehurst, but getting only a draw. Swiden taunted Whitehurst throughout, calling him a, quote, phony. Reporters said that Swiden stole both the fight and the gold fillings in Whitehurst's teeth. Gainsford, meanwhile, dismissed Swiden as a fighter who, quote, smells out the place. The arena needs a deodorizer. In his next bout, Swiden lost another disputed decision, this time to Howard King. Swiden taunted King throughout, yelling, "Look out, here it comes," whenever he threw a punch. He also whispered obscenities in King's ear whenever the two got close, all in an attempt to get his opponent to lose his cool. Swiden later complained that he was not getting a fair shake with the judges because he wasn't connected to the IBC, the International Boxing Club, who controlled so many big names of the era. "They'll never match me against them," Swiden said. "They're afraid to give me such bouts because I can beat them." By the summer of 1960, Swiden was the only heavyweight calling for a fight with Sonny Liston. "Believe me," Swiden said, "I'd love to fight him. I'll go 10 rounds with that guy." "Liston knocks out Patterson," Billy Conn said. "Liston and Johansson? The Humane Society would have to be notified. But Liston and Swiden? If there's one guy Liston won't hit, it's Swiden. Nobody hits Swiden." Conn's statement was based on a 2-round sparring session between Swiden and Liston back in 1956. Witnesses saw Swiden use his entire bag of tricks, twisting and turning Liston and stepping on his feet. Swiden knew all about survival, a self-taught master boxer guided by instinct. In July of 1960, Swiden's manager Bunny Buntag fell ill and released him from his contract. Swiden only fought once more, finally getting a decision over his longtime rival Burt Whitehurst. Swiden taunted his opponent throughout, calling out left hook and then landing the punch on Whitehurst's face. Swiden retired after the bout, tired of the sport which, in his words, didn't give him enough money to buy a cup of coffee. Pittsburgh Press writer Max Mollman wrote, quote, "So long, Art Swiden. You're a nice guy who may never win the big one, but you left this city a little better and much wiser for your coming." In his post-boxing years, Swiden became the manager of 2 nightclubs, Encore 1 in the Shadyside neighborhood in Pittsburgh, and later Encore 2 in the downtown area. In February of 1972, he found the club was more dangerous than the ring. Swiden asked 2 young men to leave after they began harassing customers, and one of them stabbed the 43-year-old ex-boxer in the stomach. With the knife still in him, Swiden fought off his attackers until they ran away. "The difference between boxing and bouncing is elementary," Swiden said. "In the ring I had to go 10 rounds. In the club, it's 10 seconds. While Swiden prided himself on being one of boxing's villains, outside the ring, he was by all accounts a nice man. Manager Buntag complained that Swiden spent all of his money on friends before he spent it on himself. Swiden echoed the statement, saying, quote, "A friend is someone you can always count on to count on you." Swiden was a natural ham, entertaining people with imitations of Clark Gable and Marlon Brando. He also liked to tease people with a put-on gruff voice, a technique he used when he acted in an independent film directed by one of the actors from the Night of the Living Dead.
What's her name?
Laura Soleil. She's Hungarian. We were really lucky to get her. We've got a sure hit now.
What about Silverberg? You think that bum will work out?
Oh, Big Eddie, that's why you have me. I can get a performance out of anyone.
You better. You better. Okay, Miss Soleil, let's get this show on the road. You're costing Big Eddie lots of money.
Hurry, Lavaris, my sweet.
I would have been ready sooner, Fondue, darling, but your body makeup man took forever to do me.
Who?
Oh, he did. Your body makeup man.
He's not my body makeup man. I've never seen him before in my life.
Okay, everybody, be quiet. And listen to Fondue here. He knows all about this movie stuff, and he's going to tell you what to do. Unless, of course, I don't like what he's telling you. In which case, Big Eddie Rigatoni's going to tell you what to do. It's all yours, Fondue.
Swiden never drank but loved his cigars, and by his 70s, his throat was ravaged by cancer, forcing him to use a plastic voice box to speak. Sadly, he passed away on August 23, 2004, at the age of 76. Art was buried in an unmarked grave until his girlfriend, Shawn Cohen, paid what she could and got the Retired Boxers Foundation with Alex Ramos involved. Shawn put a brick in the wall next to where Art's Club Encore used to be. It reads, Art Swiden, Champ Forever. She described him as a beautiful soul, a funny, witty, loving man with the heart of a lion and a boxer's heart of a true champion.